Welcome to another Pro Basketball Talk Extra. Today, myself, Kurt Helin, here with Corey Robinson. Corey, the Los Angeles Clippers are out, just gone.
Shocking.
Gone to the playoffs in the second round, kind of shocking the NBA and shocking the world because they've been considered title contenders. I mean, how much of this do you lay at the feet of the Clippers' mistakes, and how much do we just have to credit Denver for being, probably better than we thought they were?
Look, Kurt, I'm so happy you brought that up because I don't want to take anything away from what the Nuggets managed to do. It was a spectacular performance, but make no mistake, the Clippers threw this series away. I mean, when you have two bona fide, legitimate superstars in Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, you have the sixth man of the year and the previous sixth man of the year. When you have a team like that, coached by Doc Rivers, and you're up 3-1 against a team, any team, you got to close that out. But what Jamal Murray and Jokic and that team, Mike Malone, managed to do was nothing short of phenomenal. And I can't wait to see what they accomplish moving forward. But I'm very shocked. How did you manage the whole series?
I was really surprised, but it's one of those things where now looking back over the course of the season, and I'm based in LA. I've gone to a lot of Clipper games. I've been around this team. There was a sense with this team that they were going to be able to flip the switch, that they weren't really worried about, hey, man, we're not getting enough chemistry. We're not getting enough time together on the court. And Doc played it down. The players would play it down publicly and privately. And there was also just, I guess the word I'm looking for is a sense of entitlement. Like they thought, we're this good, man. We are this good. And we're going to be able to go out there and flip the switch. But Corey, you can't flip the switch if you haven't flipped it before. Like if you haven't been there, it's one thing for a team that won a championship to coast for a while and like LeBron's teams or the Warriors and then flip it because they've been there. They know what it takes. This team never flipped it in the first place.
And it's funny, too, because you're looking at the Nuggets who have come back from 3-1. The series before, you saw Jamal Murray average like 40-plus points that entire series. So talk about a team that can flip the switch. That's probably the worst matchup. But, the Clippers, I think when I look at their whole team chemistry and culture, I'd be curious to see exactly what the effect of the bubble was as well on this team. Because remember the first series where Paul George was, not really there. And then he had that incredible interview where he just poured out his heart and said, I was dealing with a lot of difficult mental health issues in this bubble. And thank God for my teammates because they brought me back, right? So that I think is going to be interesting. I wonder how much effect the bubble environment had on the Clippers going later and later into the playoffs.
I think it did. I also think, I think we could say the same thing about the Bucks, right? Like we've had that kind of conversation before where like certain teams didn't seem to adapt to the environment as well, but still up 3-1. They still had the chances. Now they've got some hard decisions to make. Montrezl Harrell is a free agent. And the Clippers Paul George talked about not making dramatic overreactive moves. Do you want to shuffle this roster up a lot, or do you think it's more just tweaks around the edges?
No, when I look at this roster, like we said at the beginning of this conversation, they have all the pieces. They have all the talent. They have the right coaching. Really, I think this is just a matter of time, really, honestly, because they were playing unbelievable basketball. And that was remember in the regular season, without Paul George and Kawhi being on the same floor at the same time. They were not even playing all their starts at the same time and still managed to have the record that they had. So I think, you just give it a couple of years and you'll be able to build something. But the problem is, and we live in kind of a reactive time where everyone wants immediate change. They're like, okay, we lost 3-1. Who's going to get fired? It's like, wait a second. That's not how every problem needs to be solved. Maybe we just need a couple of years to figure it out. Because look at Denver. Jamal Murray, he signed an incredible extension. People were like, does this guy deserve that much money? And then this series comes around, and then he shows everyone, yeah, I do. I'm a superstar now. And Jokic said in the post-game interview with Rachel Nichols that this isn't an overnight success. We've been working and building this team for years. So we know what we can do and we know what we can accomplish. I think that level of patience is just what the Clippers need. But they only have a year.
They don't. They've really got one more season with these guys locked up. And I think I think this ultimately, too, this comes back to one thing. Look, you were a player, sportsman. How many coaches told you don't skip steps? You can't skip that. You've got to follow the process. I don't think the Clippers did.
Yeah, this series didn't really look like it. This was a disappointing playoff run. Like I said, it doesn't make any sense for me. I just couldn't believe it, to be completely honest with you. I watched that game with my jaw on the ground. But like I said, props to the Nuggets for taking care of business. And I think the Clippers, like you said, they have one more year to figure this out with the pieces they have. So I hope that's enough time for chemistry. Other steps, sometimes it takes longer than others. But we'll see. Kawhi was able to do it in Toronto, so maybe he could do it in 2 years in LA. We
will see. We're talking about the lack of chemistry with the Clippers. One team with incredible chemistry, the Miami Heat. I mean, that's a team that was, again, down in this game, had some real questions about how they were defending, and found a way to come back behind Jimmy Butler, get the overtime win in game one. I mean, what did you take away from game one with the Celtics and the Heat?
Man, this is going to be a heavyweight fight, Kurt. It was so exciting all the way to the wire. What I took away from it is the Heat have so many weapons. Like Goran Dragic, I love the way he plays the game. I love the way he plays. Jay Crowder is hitting open shots, which is a problem for the Celtics. Thankfully, they have Marcus Smart, who's playing out of his mind. Can we just take a moment to talk about that defensive play he made in the final seconds? Like to get that foul and the ball back to tie it up, to give Jason Tatum the chance he needed to shoot that shot without any pressure of losing the game. That's the kind of IQ that you just don't see every day. That's why he's an all-NBA type of player, and he's like an unbelievable asset to the Celtics. Like, this is going to be a crazy series.
Yeah, it's going to be. Look, I'll take 6 more games of that. They could run this thing out. Maybe can we make it a best of 9? Like, this is going to be a fun one that's going to go for a while. So, like, I'll take it. I got to say this: Miami, not only have the culture, they got into the paint in this game, which I didn't know how that was going to go. Because I mean, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart, you're talking about long, athletic defenders on the perimeter. Miami was getting into the paint and breaking them down. And that's when Brad Stevens is walking around the outside of the campus of the NBA campus in Orlando. That's what's going to be eating at him, I think, is that they've got to defensively find a way to keep Miami out of the paint. Because if they get in there with their shooters on the outside, you're in a lot of trouble.
A lot of trouble, and Hero has shown this throughout both the previous 2 series, that not only is he a knockdown shooter, but he's unbelievable at driving to the paint and either doing that floater or kicking out. So when you have guys like that who are double threats, and then you have a guy in Jimmy Butler who just doesn't quit. This cat, his leadership is phenomenal. But the thing I love about Jimmy Butler is you look at the first 3 quarters of that game, right? He's just doing his job. He's playing great defense. He's showing up for his team in ways that don't translate to the stat sheet, right? Which is what a leader should do. And then in the fourth quarter, when they need him most, he goes down with some huge plays. That and one was massive. And the crazy thing about that play was he did the exact same play, that exact same isolation drive high off the glass, but missed it 2 or 3 series before. In a critical moment, he's unafraid. When it counts, he does the exact same play, takes it again against a great defender in Jason Tatum and knocks it down. That's that kind of fearless mentality that pervades Miami, and you saw it in Bam's block too.
Yeah,
they are fearless.
That's still the highlight of the play, and that's as good a block in a playoff game. I mean, trying to think of what outside of LeBron's chase down on Iguodala, there's probably a handful of others. Like, that's as great a block as you're ever going to see. Well, by the way, that was going to tie the game. I mean, they were down 2 with less than 10 seconds left. That would have absolutely probably sent the game to another overtime. Bam steps up. Unbelievable. I mean, that's how many guys are not only can make that play physically, are willing to step in and make that play, as opposed to going, yeah, I'm not ending up in that poster, and just, I mean, and just not willing to go there.
Yeah, and not even like the whole poster thing, just thinking about time and situation. You had 3 seconds on the clock. In overtime, you're up by 2. Both teams are in the bonus. So you're going to challenge not just a dunk, a tomahawk. Tatum was pulling back. Yeah. So you're going to challenge a tomahawk dunk in the paint on a bonus against their best player, who's a bona fide superstar, with 3 seconds left, send him to the line and tie up the game. I mean, a time and situation, but you have to do it. That's why I was so impressed, because everyone else would get that body contact, and he was able to not only challenge a dunk, but reject it in the most, superb fashion. His hand was in the rim.
Yeah,
that ball. It was a phenomenal play, incredibly bold move by Bam, and that's why, like, Jimmy Butler and his whole team said he's the heart and soul of that team, because he knows that you have me here to make those type of plays, and I don't shy away from that. I came in this league as a defensive player. That's why I'm here. So I make my money by doing things like this for my team. And when his team needed him, he showed up.
Yeah, absolutely. Those two big stories, like those big games, completely overshadowed the fact that Mike D'Antoni is a free agent. Like, this should be a much bigger story. Like, we feel like we've kind of forgotten about it. Mike D'Antoni has walked away from the Houston Rockets. He will not be back as their coach next season. There's rumors out there. I mean, what do you we'll start there. Do you picture him in someplace like Indianapolis or Philadelphia as somebody who can come in and modernize their offenses?
I mean, I would love to see that happen. I think I'd be very curious to see what he does with the 76ers, with those two, with that talent, with that roster, with Embiid and Simmons, especially since he just did the whole small ball experiment. You know, can you build an offense around Embiid, who is, you know, one of the most talented big men in the league, but hasn't been able to figure it out yet. And when I say figure it out, I mean, I look at a guy like Jokic as, I think, the best 5 in NBA right now. Like, he is playing on another level. Embiid should be there because he has every talent in the world, but he's not for whatever reason. So I like the idea of D'Antoni being able to unlock that potential, much like he did with James Harden. But my favorite team on the market right now, as you know, Kurt, is Indiana. I mean, I'm a huge Indiana fan, so I would love to see that.
That would be an interesting mix. There's a lot of talent there with Victor Oladipo and Malcolm Brogdon up and down that roster. Some guys who can get up and down the floor. So that would be an interesting fit. That look, Indiana's been the rumor forever. So we'll see what happens. That, like, honestly, before the bubble, that was like the talk. Everybody was, oh, he's going to probably end up in Indiana. So we'll see what happens. Where does Houston go from here? I mean, that's going to be a real challenge to me because, look, their roster really can't change that much. 90% of their salary cap next season, assuming it stays where they think it is, like stays flat, 90% of their salary cap is wrapped up in James Harden, Russell Westbrook, and Eric Gordon. You're kind of stuck with what you got there. So I'm curious, like, what do you want to see? Where do you think they go with this?
Well, they made some great additions, you know, this with that crazy blockbuster trade, and Covington was a big piece for them. So look, I think that they've shown that they have a smart front office and the ability to kind of get pieces. I mean, think about who they've had too. They had Chris Paul and James Harden. They had now Westbrook and Harden. Obviously, that front office is good at putting pieces around. The question is, why haven't they been successful with all the talent in the world? I mean, you have two of the most talented players in the NBA, and it's not even close. Like, when you saw the Lakers series, it just wasn't, for me, it wasn't even that competitive. I was so surprised. So I think going forward, they're going to have to figure out, okay, we tried the small ball experiment. It revolutionized in many ways, I think, the way that, you know, NBA teams run an offense, but it just didn't prove fatal enough to win a championship, which is ultimately the goal, you know? So if that's the case, then maybe you do need to say, let's get a big man in there somehow that can complement Harden and Westbrook. But I would do anything to keep those two together. I think what we saw in the playoffs is Westbrook he just didn't really seem up to his full form. He was turning the ball over a tremendous amount, and he just was taking shots that weren't in his normal kind of flow and rhythm. And I think that's what kind of tipped the favor against Houston.
Yeah, exactly. I think that you've got to find somebody. The names being bandied about, Jeff Van Gundy, former Rockets coach, comes back and says, it's a great storyline. If you're Jeff, man, are you giving up the gig, the cushy gig in the booth next to Mark? Like, that's kind of a hard thing to walk away from, right? Like, you don't work nearly as many hours. You don't quite make as much, but you make good money. Like, I don't know. We'll see. Ty Lue is out there. Go ahead.
If you love the game, you love the game, right? Some people just are gym rats. You just love it.
And he's been back. Remember, he was coaching the USA team that got them to the World Cup and qualified for the Olympics, which was made up of G Leaguers. So he got a little taste again. Maybe he wants back in. We'll see. It's an interesting line. He also has a great relationship with James Harden. So maybe we'll see. Houston can go a lot of different directions. I wouldn't be shocked if you saw like Sam Cassell come back as like a lead assistant with the Clippers. Maybe Clippers assistants may not be red hot right now, but like Sam Cassell comes back as a former Rocket and a kind of breath of fresh air, and maybe he's got something in there. Like, it's going to be interesting to see where they go with this.
And Kurt, I have a quick question for you. Do you think who is the leader of that team? Is it Harden or is it Westbrook?
Oh, it's Harden. It's ultimately Harden's team, and I think Harden has the power with the organization too. Like, ultimately, you're building around him. I mean, he's 2 years away. In 2022, he can opt out, and he could walk if he wanted to go somewhere else. I don't think he wants to, but superstars with that kind of leverage in the NBA, Corey,
we've seen crazier things.
He's getting wherever he wants, it's coming his way.
Yeah, it's such an interesting dynamic. But you're right. I loved how people in the presser asked, Harden, who's going to be the coach next year.
Yeah.
It definitely shows the kind of sway that he has with that program.
He does get – I don't think – Daryl Morey, who will be back as the GM, is picking the coach. But there's a certain amount of – and Kevin Durant and Russell and Kyrie Irving had this too. They're sitting up in the Roman Emperor's box at the Coliseum getting to thumb up, thumb down any choice. Like if they really didn't like somebody's name, the team wouldn't go there. So it's going to be something fun to watch going forward, Corey, man. This is going to be one interesting offseason. It's
going to be a roller coaster. I mean, between Giannis's free agent, it's just like the whole thing. The Clippers, what can they do to come back? The rest of the playoffs. It's going to be madness.
It is going to be madness. It's going to be fun to watch, man. Look forward to talking to you through all of it.
Yes, sir.